You are no longer contributing to the family future. That's what my husband, Mark, told me 7 years into our marriage, 3 months after I lost my job. It wasn't a question or a suggestion. It was a demand presented with an Excel spreadsheet on a Friday night. He demanded we go 50-50 on absolutely every single household bill. He thought he was teaching me a lesson in responsibility. What he didn't realize was that he was handing me the blueprint to demolish our marriage, legally and emotionally, and I followed it to the absolute letter. This is the story of how I took his 50-50 demand and used it to split everything, and why he begged me to stop when he realized what he had actually asked for. Before that fateful Friday, our life was, by all appearances, rock solid. We were the couple who did brunch, went hiking, and had long-term financial plans taped to the inside of our kitchen cabinet. We had been together for almost 10 years and married for 7. Mark, a mechanical engineer with a predictable, high-earning salary, handled the big expenses, the mortgage, the car payments, the heavy-hitting insurance policies. I, a graphic designer and marketing consultant, managed the liquid assets, groceries, utilities, home decor, vacation savings, and all the invisible labor that kept our house running smoothly. We were a team, a well-oiled machine where my salary, while slightly less than his, was crucial for our comfortable, no-stress lifestyle. The trouble started last spring. My agency, like many others, underwent a huge corporate restructuring, and I was one of the unlucky ones let go. It was a humiliating, blindsiding meeting, but when I called Mark, he was initially sympathetic. "It's fine, honey. We're stable. Take a breath, update your portfolio, and we'll figure it out." He said those words, but looking back, I realized they came with an invisible expiration date. For the first 4 weeks, things were okay. I was applying for jobs, networking, and taking some low-pay freelance gigs to keep busy. But the house was cleaner, the meals were more elaborate, and I was taking on 100% of the domestic load, essentially running the home like a 5-star resort while trying to launch a new job search. I thought I was showing him my value. I thought I was contributing in a different, important way. Then, the resentment began to curdle in Mark. It started subtly, a sigh when he saw me on the couch reading a job skills book instead of drafting a pitch, a snide comment about daytime TV, when I was actually on a crucial informational interview call. By month 3, the niceties were gone. He was tired of coming home and only seeing me. He needed me to be a contributor, and in his purely materialistic mind, that meant having an income. The confrontation itself was a masterpiece of cold, corporate cruelty. I remember the exact moment. The scent of the takeout pad thai I'd ordered was still in the air. He didn't even wait for us to finish eating. He pushed his plate aside and pulled out his laptop and a stack of printed papers. Our last 6 months of joint bank statements, color-coded and highlighted. "We need to talk about this," he started, his voice flat and managerial. "I've run the numbers. Since you lost your job, our liquid savings have dropped 18%. We're losing ground, Sarah." I tried to interject. "I've been applying for 15 jobs a week, Mark, and I'm making dinner every night and handling all the yard work." He cut me off with a raised hand. "That's maintenance. That's not building. The fact is, for the first time since we were married, I am carrying 90% of the financial burden for this household. I am supporting you entirely, and it's unacceptable. We agreed on a partnership." He looked at me, not with love or concern, but with the judging gaze of a bank manager reviewing a bad loan. "From the 1st of next month, we are splitting every single bill 50-50ths. Mortgage, utilities, streaming services, groceries, gas for the house, everything. You need to start contributing to the family future again." The phrase, "no longer contributing to the family future," echoed in my ears. It wasn't about the money, it was about the principle. In one sentence, he had quantified my entire worth by my ability to generate external income. 7 years of emotional support, career cheering, home management, and planning, all zeroed out because I didn't have a paycheck. My value was transactional. My heart didn't just break. It hardened into a cold, sharp shard. I looked at the man I loved, the man who had promised for richer or for poorer, and saw a man who saw me as an equity partner whose stock had just plummeted. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry either. I lay there in the dark next to him, listening to his deep, even breathing, and I realized he hadn't just changed the rules of our marriage. He had changed the very definition of it. If our partnership was now a strictly transactional 50-50 business arrangement, I decided I would be the most meticulous, calculating, and ruthlessly logical business partner he could ever imagine. I would take his rule and apply it universally, eliminating every single non-contractual courtesy that makes a house a home. I would split everything. The next morning, the full split began. Mark was clearly expecting a few weeks of sulky compliance and desperate job hunting, followed by me meekly apologizing and accepting his financial dominance. He did not expect me to walk into his home office with a digital copy of his spreadsheet, now appended with 20 new tabs. I agree, I announced, setting my coffee cup down. We will go 50-50 on everything. But since you defined our relationship purely by contribution, we need to account for all contributions. He looked up, surprised. Good. I thought you'd be more difficult. Oh, Mark, I smiled, a tight, cold expression that didn't reach my eyes. I'm not difficult. I'm just thorough. Let's start with phase 1, the money. I outlined the immediate changes. The joint account, it was closed. 2 new individual accounts were opened. All bills would be paid from a third, temporary 50-50 contributions account, which we would each fund with half the mortgage, half the insurance, and half the utilities by the 25th of the month. Groceries. This was the first place he balked. I showed him the new grocery tracking system. Every single item bought, down to the brand of toothpaste, was scanned, logged, and divided. I bought my half of the eggs and labeled them in the fridge with a strip of blue painter's tape. He bought his half and used red. The detail. We went grocery shopping that afternoon. He put a $4.99 package of imported cheese in the cart. I stopped him. Is that 50-50 usage? I don't eat brie. He sighed, put it back, and got a smaller piece that was exactly half the price, which he bought entirely on his own card. The sheer administrative overhead of buying a gallon of milk, which had to be split, poured into 2 smaller, labeled containers and logged, infuriated him within 2 days. The car. We had one shared car, a Honda CR-V. We need to log mileage, I stated. I use the car for job interviews and errands. You use it for work commute and gym. We need to track it to split maintenance, gas, and depreciation exactly 50/50ths. I installed a simple mileage tracking app on the dashboard, linked to a shared spreadsheet. He felt like he was clocking in just to drive his own car. He thought this was excessive, but since he had set the transactional boundary, he couldn't argue. This is exhausting, Sarah. You're being punitive. I'm being fair, Mark. I corrected him. You define the system. I'm simply operating within its constraints. Then came phase 2, the invisible labor. This is where the drama truly escalated, and where he began to drown. For 7 years, I had provided free of charge the following services: executive housekeeping, laundry management, menu planning, errands and logistics coordination, and emotional labor. I calculated an hourly market rate for each task based on local service costs. For executive housekeeping, I used the rate of a high-end cleaner, $35 per hour. For meal planning and preparation, I used a private chef's consulting rate, $40 per hour. Emotional labor, I calculated at the rate of a low-tier life coach, $50 per hour. I presented him with a beautifully designed, laminated weekly chore and service roster. It was split into 2 columns, mine and yours, with time slots. The kitchen, the cooking war, this became the most hostile zone. For years, I cooked 7 nights a week. Now it was 3 nights for me, 3 nights for him, and 1 night for takeout, split 50-50. The scene. On his night, he cooked a single serving of instant ramen or ordered pizza for himself. On my night, I cooked a delicious balanced meal. But I only prepared my portion. One night, I made pan-seared scallops with risotto. I measured out a precise, single serving and plated it beautifully. He came into the kitchen, his mouth watering, and reached for the pan. Wait, I said gently. That's my dinner. Yours is the leftover pad thai from last week, or you can order something. Are you serious? You're going to eat that in front of me? He sputtered. I paid for 100% of these ingredients, and I contributed 100% of the labor to prepare this single serving. If you want a portion, I can bill you 50% of the ingredient cost plus 50% of the $40 per hour prep fee, prorated for the 30 minutes I spent. His face went white. He ate his cold pad thai while I enjoyed my scallops, making sure to compliment my own cooking skills loudly. The laundry. This was surprisingly effective. I purchased a second, separate laundry basket. These are my clothes, I told him, pointing to the original one. This is your basket. I am only responsible for the contents of mine. He ignored it for a week, letting his hamper overflow. Finally, needing clothes, he asked me to do a load. I'm sorry, Mark. Laundry service isn't included in the 50-50 split of the mortgage. You can use the machine anytime. If you would like to hire me, my rate for wash, dry, and fold is $35 per hour, minimum 2 hours paid up front. He ended up spending a disastrous Saturday trying to figure out how the settings worked, shrinking 3 of his work shirts. He had never touched the machine before. The housekeeping. I got even more specific here. I divided the house by square footage and utility. I cleaned the kitchen, but only the 50% I used. I meticulously vacuumed my side of the living room rug. The detail. The bathroom was a masterpiece of passive aggression. I cleaned the sink, but only my half of the counter space, drawing an imaginary line down the middle. He was a notoriously messy shaver. I left a mountain of his beard clippings exactly on his side of the vanity for 3 days. When he complained, I simply replied, "That's your contribution to the aesthetic of your half of the space. Mine is spotless." The emotional labor, the dramatic climax, the money and the chores were transactional annoyances, but the removal of emotional support was what truly started to break him. When he got home, I no longer initiated conversation. If he started talking about a bad day at work, I would listen patiently for exactly 2 minutes, and then if the topic was not directly related to our shared financial obligations, I would look at my watch. Is that a 50-50 topic? I would ask sweetly. What? Well, you're requesting my time and emotional energy to process an external stressor. Since we're splitting everything, is this time going on the clock? Or is this purely your individual problem that I am not obligated to invest in? He started keeping silent. The house became a tomb of transaction. He was paying 50% for quiet, cold logistical efficiency, but 0% for love, comfort, or partnership. The absolute breaking point. The moment I knew I had won and lost simultaneously, came 3 weeks after the full split. Mark caught a terrible stomach flu. He was absolutely miserable, feverish, weak, and camped out on the bathroom floor. In the past, I would have been beside him with ginger ale, cool compresses, and endless sympathy. He called my name weakly from the bathroom, asking for Gatorade and a blanket. I walked to the threshold, notebook in hand. Are you requesting medical aid? I asked, my voice flat. Sarah, I'm dying. Just get me a blanket. A blanket is fine, that's shared property, I said, tossing one in. But Gatorade, crackers, and Tylenol will need to be purchased. That is an individual health expense. You can Venmo me $12.50 for the cost of the items. And if you require me to administer or monitor your state, my caregiving rate is $20 an hour. I can take your temperature for a one-time fee of $5. He stared at me, his eyes glazed with fever and disbelief. You're serious? You set the rules, Mark. If I care for you out of pity, I'm contributing more than 50% of the relational energy, and that is not our agreed-upon contract. If you value my comfort above your $5, then you shouldn't have devalued my contribution when I needed your support. He didn't ask again. He dragged himself to the kitchen to get his own water. The transactional contract had been fulfilled, but the human contract had been utterly shredded. 2 days later, when he was well enough to sit upright and look me in the eye, he tried to retreat. We were sitting in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of our divided life. My labeled cereal, his unwashed clothes, the imaginary line down the middle of the sofa. Sarah, I can't do this anymore, he whispered, running a hand over his face. I was wrong. I was stressed. I didn't mean it to be like this. I just wanted you to look for a job harder. I want the old us back. I closed the financial log on my laptop, the final calculation of his debt to me, for the shared mortgage from the previous month, already tallied. The old US is gone, Mark. You killed her 3 weeks ago. You took a vow of for richer or for poorer, and replaced it with a demand for 50/50ths or you're worthless. When you chose to quantify my entire value by my salary, you reduced our partnership to a transaction. Now you have the transaction. It's cold, it's efficient, and it is entirely equitable. I let the silence hang heavy between us. You didn't want a wife, Mark. You wanted an employee. And when I was down, you decided to cut my salary and increase my workload. That's not a partnership. That's exploitation. I stood up and walked away, leaving him sitting in his 50% of the silence. I filed for divorce that week. The process was ironically simple, thanks to Mark's meticulous spreadsheets. We already had a clear, documented record of asset and debt splitting, organized by his own hand. I didn't seek alimony or a massive settlement. I simply wanted the equitable split of assets, 50/50, exactly as he believed life should be. I had already secured a few substantial freelance contracts, enough to stabilize myself and rent a small, sunnier apartment downtown. He fought the divorce emotionally, trying to appeal to the love he had extinguished. But every time he mentioned reconciliation, I just pointed to the chore roster or the divided refrigerator. He finally understood the crushing weight of administrative, emotional, and physical labor he had taken for granted. He realized he didn't miss my paycheck. He missed the comfort and the home I created, all of which he had valued at zero. The final papers were signed 6 months later. I walked away lighter, not just from the marriage, but from the idea that my worth was defined by any external force, especially a balance sheet. The lesson I learned is that when a spouse shows you they value a transaction over a vow, you must accept their terms, execute them ruthlessly, and walk away with your half of the dignity. Marriage is not a business, and if you try to make it one, you end up losing the only thing that truly matters, the partnership itself. What would you have done when faced with that spreadsheet? Would you have fought the 50/50, or embraced the destruction it enabled?